All right, for this video, I'm going to break down the 10 things I think you should care about in a lease. Before we get started, my name is Erin Spradlin. I co-own Erin and James Real Estate. We work in Denver and Colorado Springs, the surrounding metros, and we're about 80% buyers, 20% sellers, and we do short-term and medium-term rental strategy for our investor clients. And what I mean by that is we don't do property management, but we help our clients kind of look at what cities it's legal for depending on what model they want to do or what their goals are. But that's just for the investors. Again, we do buyers and sellers that are just regular homeowners as well. So if you're looking for a real estate agent and you're in Denver or Colorado Springs or interested in investing in either of those, please reach out. Our information will be below. If you are liking this content, I just wanted to note we have a podcast, we have TikTok, we have Instagram, we have a real estate site with a blog. I will put links to all of that below, as well as my email information, so that if you have questions, you can reach out, email me. I would love to see it in the comments, though. I'm sure whatever question you have is relevant to someone else, and so every now and then I collect the questions and then do a video on it, but I also answer it in the comments. So if you do have a question, please don't be shy. Put them down below. On that note, a like and subscribe is always appreciated. Finally, before I get into the top 10, if you are looking for consulting, I do consulting on medium-term rentals. If you are looking for a book on medium-term rentals and how to think about how to set them up, what the lease should look like, checklists, how your listing should go, how I'm thinking about this market, I did write a book, and you can find it on Amazon. It's in Kindle or paperback format. It's called American Nomads: Finding and Renting to Remote Workers, because to me, remote workers are the future of the medium-term rental space. And then my name is Erin Spradlin, and if you just Google that and American Nomads, it'll come right up. Okay, so let's get this video started. And with that, let's broadly talk about the concept of leases before we get into the countdown about the 10 things that you're gonna look for in a lease. I think a lease is really important, and the reason for that is squatters' rights. So squatters' rights vary state to state. I do happen to believe that legally, and again, I'm not a lawyer, but legally, I tend to believe that the law is looking at intent. So if you put a lease on someone, then if squatters' rights start at 30 days or 15 days or whatever, it's probably not 15 days, it's probably 30 days plus. But if you put a lease on someone, then and it goes to court or you're trying to evict someone, that lease is going to really help you. It's never going to harm you. So it's not really an issue with Furnished Finder, because Furnished Finder, you're not going to have a contract with them within Furnished Finder. So it's going to be obvious to you that you need to sign a lease with them. With Airbnb, it's a little bit more subjective because you think you have that contract and the protection through Airbnb. I would still absolutely make them sign a lease, and I do, outside of Airbnb, so that the contract spells everything out, and so that they understand the intent is that they are out after a certain amount of time. And so it's all spelled out for them. I had a consulting call this week, and they were saying, well, we're trying to keep them at 30 days or less, and that they want to be there for 35 days, so we're going to tack something on. And I was confused by this, and so I was pushing him like, well, what were you thinking with that? And he was saying, well, I'm concerned about squatters at that 30 plus mark. And so I know I've already talked about squatters, but I just want to say Airbnb does this a little bit confusing. They talk about a 28 plus day rental. It has been my experience from calling cities and asking about the Airbnb laws up and down the state that usually 30 days is the threshold. So the reason why this is relevant is because if your city goes from being Airbnb friendly or not having a law around Airbnb and then adopting or prohibiting it if it's not your primary residence, probably what they're looking at is a 30 plus day threshold. So a lot of the codes still tack back to 30 plus days. And so if you are signing leases with people for 28 days or you're renting out for 28 days, you're going to be vulnerable to them coming through and saying, no, this is a short-term rental. So to be a medium-term rental, you need to have that 30 plus day rental, and then just put a lease on them so that you're protecting yourself from squatters. A lease, if you're interested in it, I can share it with you. It's a Colorado lease. You could probably use it and add your state's amendments, or alternately you could get a state lease and then add amendments from what my lease has at the bottom and make them sign both. That's one way to do it. Again, I'm not a lawyer. You're only welcome to that lease if you won't sue me if something goes wrong. But reach out, you can email me, and I'll definitely send it to you. A final note about leases, I think a lease is there to help protect you, and the way you think about it is, I have a squatter or I have someone that hasn't paid their bills, this is going to help me evict them, blah, blah, blah. It will, but I just Having been in real estate since 2017, I want to encourage people to think about how the US legal system actually works. You do have rights, but rights aren't the same as time and money and fights with your spouse and stress. And at the end of the day, do you want this property sooner? Do you want renters in sooner? Does it make sense out of principle to go after someone in court when it's a $500 to $1,000 issue? Lease is going to protect you and help you, and you can support your argument with the law and with this contract, but sometimes it's better to just cut your losses and walk away. If you're following the lease template that I've provided for you, the first thing that you're going to see is the intro, and the intro covers term, rent, who's involved, and the amount. So this is really a summary of what actually is going to happen. So how much you're paying, who's paying it to you, and how long that lease is going to exist. Something that's important to note here is that if you have an LLC, and you probably should have an LLC if you are running this as a business, then that lease should be under the LLC. You can say Erin Spradlin doing business as, and then the address. But then at that point in the lease, the landlord is now the LLC that your property falls under. And so a lot of people, as best practice, set up their LLC as the property address and then do all of the work outside. So the intro will cover term, rent, who's involved. So obviously you as the LLC, and then also the tenants, and then the amount of money that they're going to pay you each month, and the terms of that contract. So that's the first part of the lease, is the intro. The second is the deposit and the cleaning fee. So depending on the size of the property is going to depend on your cleaning fee, but I have started to make this a pass-through cost. I am not absorbing this anymore. I'm telling the tenants, you got to pay for it. It has been harder and harder to secure a good cleaner, so I'm starting to do a $300 to $350 cleaning fee. Obviously, the size of the property depends too. I think cleaners a lot of times are looking at the numbers of bathrooms and rooms, and that's what it's based off of. So if you have someone that you like, or someone that you have an established relationship with, or you plan on using, you might just ask them, what are you typically going to charge me for a 4-2? If appliances have to be cleaned, what does that look like? And then set it up so that it's passed through. And you just put it in as a non-refundable cleaning deposit. And obviously you make that more if they're going to have animals in there. So that's how I think about the cleaning is, about a 350. Again, it kind of depends on what is reasonable for your market and also the size of your place. For the deposit, I just take first month's rent for that. And I do not give them keys or access codes or anything else until I have that first month's deposit. And that's because I've had two different people where they walked in and we felt like the place looked good, but they didn't like a couch and they walked out. And so I'm losing money while I'm trying to find a new renter, and we need to share that cost because the place looked exactly the way it did in the photos. It was described accurately. So if they don't want to be there, that's totally fine, but we both need to incur a little bit of expense on that. Also, you can't just take months and months and months of rent from them and not try and fill the space. You need to fill the space and then compensate them back so that both sides aren't suffering unnecessarily. But I take a 1 month's deposit and I do that. I make sure that I have that as well as the first month's rent before they get keys or anything else. So again, I make my clients or my tenants pay with Venmo or Zelle. And if I have multiple people renting out the space, like we had 5 college kids, so it's basically 5 different entities, it has to come from one person, and then they're responsible for collecting it from their roommates. But the third topic, use. In our lease, it talks about not using it as a business. It's a residence only. We also talk about the fact that you can't sublet it out or do medium or short-term rentals on that. I would say with that, have a conversation with your tenants about it. If they need to move out, or again, like the college students where we're renting to multiple parties, they want to rent out, I want to have a conversation with them. If someone else can come in and do the sublet that's responsible, that we can credit check on, I really don't care as long as the bills are getting paid. If you have couples coming in or couples of friends coming in or college students, I just looked in our lease, and it's if someone stays for 4 nights a week or more, they're considered a tenant at that point, and they have to pay. And I think it's important to have this in the lease. Again, if you're renting to friends and not a couple or something, sometimes there can be conflict around this, especially for younger people that might start to partner up, and then their partner's there all the time and they're not paying. So if you have this, so 4 nights or more, somebody that's unhappy, they can bring it to you as landlord. You can intervene and say, look, this is the rule, and the argument ends because it's in the lease. Number 4, pets. If you watch any of these videos, you know I'm totally pro pet, because if you have a medium-term rental space that allows for pets, you really knock out a lot of competition. A lot of people don't want pets, and when you look at research and insurance, people that have pets, you can charge them more and they don't tend to do very much damage. For our lease, so in that section we stipulate that you're allowed to have pets, but we define what the pet is. So our most recent tenant has like a 20-pound dog. We have the name of the dog in there, what breed it is. And then there's a note too, if you want to bring in another pet, just let us know. It's not necessarily that I want them to bring in another pet, but I want to have that conversation. And I think if you sound friendly and open about it in the lease, they're at least going to talk to you about it. All right, number 5, furnishing. So we used to provide a list of everything that was included in the condo space, like kitchen, number of knives, number of plates, blah, blah, blah. But we kept running into an issue where the tenant would come in and be like, there's a missing cutting board, and there's only 3 knives, and blah, blah, blah. And while I appreciate their due diligence on this, I think that they were pointing it out because they didn't want to get charged if something walked off. Again, we're typically seeing sheets and towels and kitchen towels walk off, so we're requiring people to bring those items in themselves. But I really don't care if a cutting board walks off or a pan walks off or some silverware is down. So we've actually taken that out. Instead of having an inventory of what's there, I have people come in and film everything and send it to me so that there's an agreement of this is what was available, this was the condition when you walked in. And I have them send it to me within 48 hours and put it up on a YouTube link. Or pro tip, I'm starting to have people use Marco Polo, which is a messaging app. And the reason for that is that in real estate, I was always having to film video for out-of-state clients, and it took forever to upload into Google Photos or Google Drive. Marco Polo app is immediate, and then if you need to download it, you can download it to preserve it. Okay, so number 6, utilities. So it looks like, I just pulled this stat the other day, but it looks like about 56% of renters coming through that aren't traveling nurses. I think it's more the remote workers, the slow mads, if you will. They are doing 3 months or more on a rental, on a medium-term rental. And then for 3 months, I would pay the utilities and then just build that into your costs. If you're doing 6 months or more, I would make the tenants put the utilities in their name. It is something that you don't have to deal with at that point. And also, utilities are fluctuating right now. It's not a fixed cost. So if you have them put it in their names, it's a better situation for you. But again, not really appropriate unless it's for 6 months or more. All right, number 7, maintenance. Probably the most exciting part of the lease for me. And the reason for that is because I think a lot of people have reluctance around becoming a landlord because they are worried about that midnight call when everything's flooding and they don't want to deal with it and they don't want to deal with the headaches. And I agree, it is a headache. So I say you are responsible for up to $10 of fees for maintenance. The tenants are responsible for up to $10 of maintenance, like changing light bulbs, changing batteries per month, so that I'm not getting hounded with that all the time. But more important than that, I have tenants pay and schedule for their own maintenance costs. So if something isn't working, or there's a leak or something that they want fixed, they have to schedule it. That way I'm not playing telephone to try and get it scheduled. They have to incur the first $25 of that expense, and they can only do it 3 times during the lease period. So you might want to think about that. If you have a lease period that's 6 months or a year, maybe 3 times is appropriate. If it's only for a month, maybe you want to cut that down to 1. I also put a qualifier. If it's $250 or more, they need to check with me. I would probably change this to $500 going forward. Major appliance, you might want to have them call you on that, only because appliances, typically, to have someone come out and service it and look at it, you might just be better off buying a new appliance. That's been my experience with all my appliances this year. So I'm not sure that I want to pay for someone to come out. So you kind of need to think about that. But I think that this is a great solution. If you make them pay a little bit of it up front, they might be less inclined to constantly be calling somebody in. And then also, you're not having to deal with the issue all the time. I can tell you, my partner, James, is not as comfortable with this. He feels like it might be a disincentive for them to do maintenance on the property. But again, if you're having shorter leases, it's less of an issue than if you had a lease for 2 or 3 years and you're not checking on the property. This leads us right into number 8, which is the right to inspect. So in our lease, we are allowed to inspect as long as we give you 24 hours notice. That's pretty standard. It in fact might be the law. And then we say that we can do it between 10 a.m. and 7 p.m. I also, for longer leases, so right now I have a year-long lease, I just put in there, if you, at the 6-month mark, we're going to come in and check the property. Okay, so number 9, legal costs and enforceability. This just says, if there's a breach of contract and one side can prove the other, you can potentially recoup your legal costs. I don't know. I think if you're the landlord and your tenant can't pay, or they're getting evicted, good luck going after them and trying to get the costs. I think the best way to avoid this is to screen your tenants. And I screen them by doing a background check, a criminal check. I do this through Zillow, but most important, I check how they communicate. How do they write an email and how quickly do they get back to you? This is the best indicator, because also if they lose their job or there's some kind of trying circumstances, they're going to let you know quickly and they're going to explain it clearly, and then hopefully you can come to some kind of resolution. All right, and then finally, number 10, this isn't in the lease. It's just something that I do after everyone has signed the lease. I build out a welcome document. Again, I hold off on putting in the codes to accessing or giving them the keys, but that welcome doc basically summarizes everything in the lease. Like, this is your move-in date, this is your move-out date, this is the cost for late fees, this is how you're going to pay me, this is where you're going to pay me, this is the amount of rent, this is the Wi-Fi code, this is the non-refundable deposit, this is the deposit that is refundable that I got on this day, this is when I expect your video recording, this is the parking number for, if you're in a condo or something. Also, bonus points, if you're in a condo and you have a property manager for that condo, sometimes I will give that person's name as the first point of contact before they contact me, because if it is a laundry issue or something, again, I don't want to be playing telephone, and those property managers will take care of a lot of that stuff without you being contacted. So I do list myself, but I list them first, their email, their phone number, so it's their problem first. All right, I hope this video was helpful. I hope you liked it. If you did, like and subscribe. If you have questions or comments, please drop them below. As I mentioned before, there's a website, a podcast, a TikTok, an Instagram, a book, and I offer consulting. So links to all of that below. Thanks again for watching these videos.